Alright, welcome back guys. Today I'm going to be talking about this optic right here. So this is made by Cyelee, at least I believe that's the way it's pronounced. It is their CT2, which is a green dot, red dot sight for pistols, or you could mount it on a rifle or like a PTW or something if you wanted to. And I'm going to kind of go over my experiences with this optic over the past probably month or so. I've taken it out to the range quite a few times. I put what I think is a reasonable amount of ammo through the gun with the optic on it and kind of formulate my opinion on that. And I also, quote unquote, torture tested, the optic, at least to some degree. And I'll kind of show you the video footage of that as well. So before I go over that, I kind of want to go over the basic features of this, just so you can kind of see what it looks like. So essentially, this is for lack of better words, it's a clone of a lot of the other optics that are out there that are made in China, or a lot of the ones that are on Amazon. So for instance, if you're familiar with this one that I did a little while back, this is a Gotar. This one is it has a different reticle in there. I don't know if you can see it. I may have turned it off. The battery must have died recently. So I guess there's a point for that. But all of these are basically very similar in construction. They're a little bit different, obviously, just aesthetically, but how they're built internally is more or less identical. At least from what I can tell. So if you've used one of these, this one I've used for a while, and I took through a night vision class and everything, and it's performed just fine. I also did kind of a torture test on this one, and it held up, just fine. So the same can be true of this one. Now I did rack this one against my truck a couple times, against the truck bed whenever it's folded down. I'll insert video footage at some point. And if you can tell in here, there's actually no damage to the lens, at least not that I can see. Whenever I first did it, I thought I just marred the snot out of the lens, but the lens is tougher than I thought it would be. And one of the reasons why that does happen is, if you can see on here, that lens sticks out just ever so slightly further than the protective lip of it. And that's something that I don't like about it. But to be fair, this one does the exact same thing. The lens sticks out just a little bit. So all you companies out there that make these things, the Chinese companies, go ahead and make this to where the hood sticks out a little bit further that direction, or make the glass, a little bit farther inwards to protect it. Because whenever I did rack it against the truck bed, you'll see it had scuffs all over the place. And if that had been something metal, it would have scratched it if it wasn't polymer.
I got it zeroed in. Again, this is the Cyelee C2 or CT2. This is their green version. So again, here's the optic. I'm just gonna smash it on here a few times. See, it's digging in right here, so it's actually taking out chunks. And you can see the glass is kind of jacked up now. So I felt like that was a pretty good test. We'll see if it held zero. Hopefully you can see all that on there. All right, so here's the same target after doing a durability test on that Cyelee Red Dot. There's a couple rounds I got here and here, but the majority of them were grouping pretty well, so I attribute those to me. I did bench rest on these. This was my point of aim, and I was hitting over here. So it did shift a little bit. That's roughly a 3-inch shift at about 20 yards or so. So that's not horrible, but that basically means that this optic isn't duty grade. If you smack it around like that on something, it's probably gonna lose zero to some degree. Now, granted, I'm still making hits, and they're just barely off center, so that's not bad. It's still combat accurate, so take that for what it's worth. Personally, based on this, I wouldn't use it as a duty optic. Maybe a concealed carry, but if it takes a good tumble, you're gonna be off a little bit. So as a range toy, or as just a spare optic for a gun that you only shoot at the range, this would be perfectly fine. But thought I would show you that. All right, we're out here again. Here is the Cyelee CT2. And let's see if it loses zero this time. if the screws will loosen. All right, so hopefully you can see that the glass did get a little scuffed. I don't care, that'll probably buff out, but let's go see if it held zero. All right, so here is the before shot. This is just me shooting freehand about 25 yards. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds that I shot bench. That was me jerking it, but it was well zeroed before I racked it on the truck bed. After racking it on the truck bed, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots. So, and I was aiming for the head for that time because it was clear because I ran out of paint. So it held zero the second time I racked it off the truck aggressively. It's like 115 heat index out here, so sorry, I'm hot. So it held zero the second time. The first time, whenever I did it, it went from about, you know, here where the zero was to about here. So it lost zero technically, but at 25 yards with a pistol, I mean, it's not a huge difference. My guess is whatever, you know, little gear or teeth or whatever the detent was on may have not been set all the way, so it may have just kind of jumped. But again, that's kind of one of the things you get with cheaper optics. It's not necessarily, you know, as durable as some of the other ones out there. But the fact that it held up to this the second time impressed me enough to where I would recommend it for like a range toy or something that's not going to be used a lot. You know, I wouldn't use it for duty use still. You might get away with it for concealed carry, but I would still recommend something better for concealed carry as well. But, you know, for a range toy or a hand to somebody else gun kind of thing, or a training gun or whatever, looks like it'd be fine.
Back to this optic. So as you can tell, it is a green dot, and it has a large amount of adjustment. I didn't find any of the adjustments lacking. It does have, you know, quote-unquote night vision settings. I didn't test with the night vision settings. It's not something I would put on a gun that I would use with night vision, just because I prefer the reticle when I change out the batteries. I prefer the reticle that this has, or just, you know, something like my Glock 19 that I have a Holosun EPS on. But if you want to, you know, you could use it with that. It does get plenty dim. One thing I did notice about the green dot, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. If you're on the fence about a green dot versus a red dot, this might be interesting to you. Personally, after using this, I learned that I prefer a red dot. I was very curious, and again, this optic was sent to me by Cyelee, so I didn't pay anything for it, so, you know, full disclosure there. That doesn't change what I'm about to say, because I'm honest with my reviews. But I don't really like the green dot, and I know that's personal preference, but let me kind of explain why. So when you're using this green dot, whenever I had it in the daylight, it got plenty bright where I could see it all the time. But whenever I aimed at lighter things, like say that white, I don't know if you can, let me find something that's white on here. Here's a good example. Here's a UTG little box. So whenever you aim at something that's white, it kind of disappears, versus if you have something, and this is at a brightness setting, let me double check. Yeah, this is at a brightness setting where it's actually a little bit too bright for indoors. So realistically, let me turn it down to where I would probably keep it. Probably about here. So if you aim at something white, it kind of disappears. It's fine on darker things, and it's even fine on the green. But whenever you aim at something white, I know you can see it, but it just doesn't pop out like red does. Now, whenever you crank it up, that problem kind of goes away, but you can kind of see it almost turns white. It doesn't look green anymore. And that's just because, again, that's nothing to knock about this company. That's just green dots in general. The green is closer to white than red is, obviously. There's a good video, I don't remember who makes it, but if you type into YouTube like which reticle color is best for an ACOG, he goes over all the nerdy science about, you know, which color is best, and he kind of shows why red is best in most situations, and green kind of washes out in water, it washes out in white, it washes out. I found out it also washes out kind of looking at dirt, like dirt berms, whenever it's really bright outside. It's still visible, you can still see it, but it doesn't pop out as much. And whenever you are aiming at something like right here, I found myself distracted by the green. It's almost like my eye is just sucked into the green instead of to my target. So it's harder to target focus. So for me, maybe that's just, you know, maybe that's a training issue. I don't know. But for me, I don't like the green just simply because it either distracts me or it's hard to see in certain conditions. You might like it, and that's fine. But this was a good way for me to test that. So do I still like it? Yes, I still like this optic. I just prefer red over the green. So, and they do make red versions. So if you want the red version, you know, get that.
I don't dislike the green dot. I'm just used to a red dot. And the green, it just blends in better with all, I don't know, pretty much everything, which is not a good thing in my mind. I lose it in the bright green brush. Like, it doesn't disappear completely, but it just doesn't stand out as much as red. Now that said, it's perfectly usable, and if you like green, I mean, go for it. I don't dislike it. I just don't like it as much as a red. Tactical pocket reload, because I'm high speed like that.
So let's go over my journey using this thing. And again, I've shot it a fair amount to get a decent opinion on it. So it has a battery tray that, you know, loads on the top. So that's good. You don't have to unmount it every time you want to sight it in. Down here you can see the emitter has like a little hole down there where water will actually get in there and then drain out the bottom. You go watch the GoTar video if you want to see. That's not a problem. That also helps prevent water from getting on the lens emitter itself, so that's a good thing. The hood does protect the lens on the inside from like rain and stuff, so you shouldn't get rain on the inside there. Now if you do, it's the same problem as every open emitter red dot. You're gonna have to wipe it out with something or you're gonna get starbursting. That's normal. I did witness mark the screws, and something that my first, well, they only sent me one, but whenever they sent me this one, the initial screws it came with, this is a Brownell slide. It's a Zev cut, so it has the posts that stick up instead of the post up front up for the RMR cut, which this is an RMR cut. It has a post that these smaller screws screw into. And the screws that came with it initially were actually just slightly undersized. I don't know if the screws are just out of spec or they sent the wrong size screws or what that was, but they would wobble whenever you screw down in. So they were not the right screws. So I ended up using screws that came with this one. And you can see those screws in there. I ended up using basically these same screws, and they all have the same body more or less. So those screws work just fine. Now the length on these screws, and I contacted them and they said, yep, sure enough, those screws are too small, so they sent me another set of screws. Now the problem with the screws that they include is they're not long enough in my opinion. So I did witness mark them and I never had them back out, and I didn't use Loctite. So, you know, there's that. But what I will say is whenever I screwed these in, you get one full rotation and then just a smidgen more, and then that's as tight as you can get them. Personally, for like a duty optic or a carry optic or something that I'm going to trust my life to, I want those screws to be long enough where I can get at least 2 full rotations before it starts, you know, getting tight. Maybe that's just me wanting to overbuild things, but I don't trust just one, you know, thread essentially, or one thread, you know, circle holding this in. Now, did it come loose? No. They do have, you know, like a thread locker material on the screws themselves, and it comes with screws for regular RMR cuts in here as well, and I'll show you that in a second. But it does, it doesn't screw down far enough for the thread locker that's on the thread to actually engage. Again, it held 0. You can use your own thread locker, so maybe that's not an issue. But for me, it was. I would prefer them to have screws that allow you to get at least one more full rotation, maybe a little bit more, because, again, I like things to be overbuilt. And in case you're wondering, yes, I do have these clock sights turned backwards because I'm cheap and I just wanted the back blacked out. So, no, you can't go into them through this, as you can tell. So once the screw issue was resolved, you know, and I used the screws, the second set of screws that they sent to me, you know, it tightened up just fine. I didn't have any problems with it. The adjustment clicks on here are tactile and audible. You can hear them move. I'm not going to do that because I prefer it to, you know, hold 0, but they are audible. One thing I will say is whenever I was testing this and racking it against the truck bed, the first time I did it, it did lose 0. Now, it could have been where the detent wasn't, you know, actually set in place. Maybe I just turned it to where it, you know, just barely was engaged, or it wasn't engaged. It was technically on top of a ridge or something, you know, so that is entirely possible, and it could have jumped. And based on all my testing of all these other Chinese ones that are basically made the same, that's probably what happened, because I've never had any of those during the durability move as well. And when it lost 0, it just barely did. It basically at about 20 yards moved down and to the left about 2 to 3 inches, something like that, which is, it's not a big deal for a pistol. But it is a thing. Now, the second time I racked it against the truck bed, I, again, will insert video, I was violent with it. It didn't lose 0 at all. So I have the feeling I just didn't turn the turrets, just right, or they were settling in or something. I don't know. It's a $100 optic. What do you expect? But it held 0 the second time. Now, because of that, I would not recommend this for a duty use gun or a concealed carry gun. Now, what I would recommend this one for, again, if you want the Green Dot, is for just a range toy or a spare gun, or say you bought like a PSA dagger or something like that, and it's a cheaper, Glock clone or whatever, and you just want something to put on it, but it's not necessarily a, life or death gun. I think that's what these shine at, and, just like this one over here, or this UTG here in the background, I think that's what these are really on the market for, at least in my opinion. I would prefer a Holosun or a Trijicon or, insert name brand here for something that's, duty ready. But as a range toy, or just as a spare gun, or as a loaner, or, give to your friend when he wants to go to the range kind of thing, or teaching someone on a Red Dot, this is perfectly acceptable. And for $100, more or less, I think it's a little bit more than that, but for around $100, $125, this is a very good optic. Again, I would just prefer going with a Red Dot. So let's show you what's in the box. It has a very America, box, so kudos to them. Comes with a little, spec sheet here. See, it does have 2 night vision and 8 illumination settings, or 10 so total, 8 daytime, 2 night vision. It does say on here not to torque it, somewhere on here. It says not to torque it past 15 foot-pounds, if I remember correctly. I don't see it on here. It's on there. Well, there's another page. There it is, 15 foot-pounds. So you don't want to torque it, past that. Now, whenever they say foot-pounds, I don't know if they actually mean foot-pounds or if they mean inch-pounds. But basically, I'm using the little screwdriver torque wrench whenever I'm putting this down. So don't over-tighten it. That's important to know because I have stripped out a few screws, and I know at least one of them was my fault. The rest of them were the plates and screws' fault, but you never want to over-torque things. So here's all their information in case you want to read that. You can pause it. You can read that. There you go. I'm not reading over all that. The battery life is sufficient. There you go. They explain this for people who don't understand how Red Dots work. Comes with a little sticker, which I don't care about, and it comes with a little cleaning cloth, which I have a ton of these, but these are actually useful. I put one in my wallet just so I can clean my glasses or sunglasses. It does come with a little protective, sheath or rubber cover, whatever you want to call it, so that's nice if you care about that. I will never use it, but it's there. It comes with a little base plate. It's Picatinny rail mount, so you can see on here you can mount it onto anything that's pick rail available, and it also comes with your little Allen key for tightening your screws. I never use these because they're always undersized and I don't like stripping out my screws, so I use professional tools or just higher quality tools. And it comes with your screws. It comes with your regular RMR mount screws, and it comes with the screws that are for the their Picatinny rail, and then it comes with your Zev cut screws as well. Now again, I still would recommend them making longer screws for the Zev cut, but beggars can't be choosers. The buttons on here, I guess I can show you that now. You can feel them, they click. I've never accidentally hit any, so I didn't have any problems with those. They do have these 2 little holes here that I assume are for water drainage, but they're not really like down below, so I don't know, maybe they're just for aesthetics. And you can kind of see on here kind of what it looks like. Now you'll have to buy suppressor height sights in order to use it with this, or if you happen to have some really tall metal ones, there aren't suppressor height sights, but you might be able to get to work. Something I wish that they did is the same that this Govutar did, and they kind of notch out the bottom, and that would allow you to use not Glock sights, but if you have like True Glow aftermarket sights that are metal, they're usually a little bit taller than these, you'd be able to see your iron sights with this, or use this rear thing as an iron sight, versus this one is just flat across the top. So I wish they had that on there. So again, these are just nitpicking criticisms, but whenever you're paying for something, you generally want to get the most bang for your buck. But if you guys have any questions about this, feel free to let me know. Again, I would not recommend this for duty use, but for just everybody has 12 different handguns that they want to mount a Red Dot on, and you're not going to spend $500 per gun per Red Dot. That's, in my opinion, a waste of money. For more or less at this point, this is just kind of a testing gun. It's a toy, more or less at that point. It's a range toy. All my serious use guns, I get serious use lights and serious use, Red Dots and everything. And then my range toys and my fun guns or my, just handout loaners or whatever, they get stuff like this because I'm not going to go broke spending, getting the latest and greatest for every single gun I own because I'm not rich. So anyways, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them down below. I will try to answer as many as I can. Hopefully this was useful to you. Again, the biggest reason why I wanted this optic whenever they asked me about it is I just wanted to test out a green dot, and this was a easy way to do that, and I learned quite a bit. I learned I don't really like the green dots, but you know, your mileage may vary. Some people just absolutely love them. So again, buy it. It's $100. You know, try it yourself, see if you like it. But anyways, hopefully you all have a good one.